It's almost the end of the offseason, and you know what that means. Random videos on topics that have next to nothing to do with the modern college football landscape and are nothing more than filler talking points to earn the intrigue of some and the anger of others. Today we're going to be renaming boring nicknames. There are, at this moment, 134 FBS football programs. We just added Missouri State and Delaware, which got us to 136, and there will probably be a few more after that. Part of the unique nature of every university athletics program is their nickname, or the name that the athletics teams go by when they play each other. For example, Nebraska are the Cornhuskers, and Akron are the Zips. Most of these nicknames are unique. Some of them are not. During one of my last videos where I examined the history of every single FBS team's nickname, I noticed that some of these teams that had common nicknames, like Wildcats, Tigers, and Bulldogs, had also had nicknames that they went by in the past that they didn't go by anymore. And as a creative challenge, I wondered if there were any nicknames that they could go by that would make them more unique in the modern college football space. So I decided that I would go down the list of every team whose nickname isn't unique, that meaning they share it with at least one other FBS college football team, and change them to a nickname that I think better suits them or their university. There are a few things I have to say before going down this rabbit hole. For one, I'm one person who spent his entire life living in one place and have only done surface-level research on the cultures of these specific universities. Not only is this video not advocating for these names to change, since it's just a fun off-season video not meant to hurt any feelings, but it's also nowhere near the best, because, again, I'm one person, and I don't know these schools as well as some of you might. So I'd be interested to see if any of you in the comments below can provide better options than what I come up with. Second, to make it more interesting, I'll try to change every single one of the common nicknames at this level, even if one team had that particular nickname first. Like, for example, the nicknames of Tigers and Bulldogs. I won't have any of the current FBS teams with the nicknames of Tigers or Bulldogs keep those nicknames because most of the popularity behind them stemmed from the success of Ivy League teams like Princeton and Yale, who had those nicknames first. Besides, it allowed me to stretch my creative muscles a little bit, and that's more fun for me. So, without further ado, let's get right into peak off-season mode by giving new nicknames to some college sports teams. So by scrolling through the FBS's Wikipedia article, I can count 21 instances of repeated nicknames. There are 3 Aggies, 2 Bears, 2 Bobcats, 2 Broncos, 4 Bulldogs, 2 Bulls, 2 Cardinals, 3 Cougars, 2 Cowboys, 3 Eagles, 2 Falcons, 2 Gamecocks, 3 Huskies, 2 Mountaineers, 4 Owls, 3 Panthers, 2 Rebels, 2 Spartans, 2 Trojans, 5 Tigers, and 4 Wildcats. Now, there are some schools I'm leaving out here. Cincinnati and Sam Houston are both known as the Bearcats, but Sam Houston's Bearcats is spelled with a K and is therefore more unique. UCF and Rutgers are both known as the Knights, but Rutgers is known as the Scarlet Knights officially, so that's different. The same can be said between the NC State and Nevada Wolfpacks, since NC State is known as the Wolfpack and Nevada is the Wolf Pack with a space. That counts as unique, so they'll be ignored. Las Cruces is in a very interesting part of the United States. Just a few miles from El Paso and less than an hour away from the Mexico border, NMSU might be one of the most unique athletics departments in the United States, with its student demographics being roughly 64% Hispanic. I wanted to keep its history of being a land-grant institution as well as blending it with its unique Hispanic culture, and came up with a nickname that hasn't been used at the FBS level yet, that being either the Vaqueros or the Caballeros. New Mexico as a state is full to the brim with Wild West culture, and the Caballero, the Spanish precursor to the American cowboy, most known in the New Mexico territory, was the perfect fit. Now, I couldn't verify whether or not Texas A&M was the first to officially earn the nickname of the Aggies, but honestly, it's every bit their identity, so picking a new one would be hard. I could just lean back on their old nickname of the Farmers, but that's also boring, so I turned to A&M's most well-known cultural remnant. Up until the 60s, they used to require male students to serve in the Corps of Cadets. This military history is perfect for a new mascot, and if they had to get rid of Aggies, I'd bet that Cadets would be a solid mascot to choose. Utah State is considered a name change from Aggies to something else before, and the term they almost went with, the Highlanders, makes complete sense. Logan, Utah, and Utah State as a whole shares much of its history with Scottish-American settlers, and the mountains and hills that surround Logan would make the Highlanders name perfect. But this is the same guy who still hasn't grown out of his dinosaur era and probably never will, so in my heart of hearts, they're going to be the Utah State Raptors, and there's nothing you can do about it. Ohio chose its nickname of the Bobcat from a university contest back in 1925, so there really wasn't much else to go off of in terms of what they wanted their mascot to embody. Ohio University sits within the town of Athens. Like Troy, another school in a town named after an old world city, I chose to honor the nomenclature of the city of Athens by looking at the Greek Athens to choose a nickname. While most warriors from ancient Greece that came from the city of Sparta were called, well, obviously Spartans, Athens didn't necessarily have a name for their warriors, but they did utilize a specific type of foot soldier they referred to as hoplites. So Ohio becomes the Ohio Hoplites. In losing the Bobcat, which was chosen for its fighting spirit, I had to find another creature local to southwestern Texas that also fit the characteristics Texas State wanted from their mascot. I settled on the peccary, also known as the javelina or skunk pig. They're wild hogs that can cause real problems for anything they disagree with, ranging from farmland to a person caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. They will fight, and they will fight hard. The Texas State Peccaries. Next up, we have USF and Buffalo, both Bulls, and honestly, this one's kind of easy. I'm just going to take both teams back to their old nicknames, the Bison for Buffalo and the Golden Brahmin for USF. Baylor had been alone as the only FBS team with the nickname of Bears for years and years and years, up until Missouri State came along and had to ruin it. Fortunately for Baylor, I decided on a nickname for them that was as fun as it was an allusion to their history. Baylor University was originally founded as a private Baptist university, and their history is peppered with strong rivalry traditions against other Texas schools like TCU and Texas A&M. So I kept with the alliteration and decided to rename them to the Baylor Batlin Baptists. Hopefully you guys like this one. I'm not trying to be disrespectful here. Most State was a little more difficult, but I still found one I think I like. Springfield, where Missouri State's campus is located in between two famous waterways. They're about an hour and a half to the south of the Lake of the Ozarks and an hour to the north of Table Rock Lake. Found in those lakes and causing problems for fishermen is the infamous alligator snapping turtle, so I chose the new nickname of Snappers from Missouri State. I'm stealing a bit from the FCS here, but you'll have to sit with me for a moment. Boise's known as the City of Trees, and it was founded in a patch of woods. Therefore, Boise State becomes the Lumberjacks. I also considered Steelhead because of the nearby Snake River, which some of you might like more. Western Michigan used to be known as the Hilltoppers due to their location on the top of a hill, but because Western Kentucky is also the Hilltoppers, I can't change their name to that. But according to a few commenters on my channel, there was at one point a push for them to rename themselves to the Mastodons. I can't confirm this, and Purdue-Fort Wayne is already known as the Mastodons, but I don't really care. Western Michigan, you are now the Mastodons. The city of Fresno was founded in 1872 as a railway town, incorporated into the Union Pacific Railroad and slowly growing into one of the biggest communities in the San Joaquin Valley. I wanted to keep that relationship with the railroad with their new mascot and borrowed a nickname from a small Kansas school, Harrington, to create the Fresno State Railers. This one's a little off-kilter. Some of you might remember a year or so ago when I had Empire on to talk about prehistoric nicknames, and a segment of that video was used bringing new nicknames to some boring teams. He brought up the fact that Georgia is home to megalodon fossils, and the concept of the Georgia Dons has been in my head ever since. Athens certainly isn't beachfront property by any means, but there's a strong lack of shark mascots at the FBS level. Why not call back to one of the biggest sharks of all time? It is harder to bark at children now, though. Alright, so this one's kind of cheating. Lots of you might know that some women's teams at Louisiana Tech are known as the Lady Texters. The simple and easy name change is to refer to the men's teams as the Texters, too. Mississippi State's athletics history is already flush with references to the Bulldogs, so choosing a new nickname for them was actually pretty difficult. Their original nickname as Mississippi State College, before adopting the nickname of the Bulldogs, was actually the Maroons. They were the Maroons for a good long while before officially becoming the Bulldogs in the 60s, so to the Maroons they return. As a few commenters joyously pointed out, back when Ball State was looking to find a new nickname other than Hoosieroons, they considered calling themselves the Goblins. It's too funny not to go back to now, and it's entirely unique to Ball State. Welcome to the world, the Ball State Goblins. It'd be easy to just slide the nickname of the minor league baseball team, the Louisville Bats, over to replace the Cardinals nickname, but I felt like it wouldn't fit well with the move from baseball to all sports. Like you'll see with Kentucky later, I also felt like switching to Colonels would just hurt Eastern Kentucky, so I couldn't go with that either. I settled on the Kings, mostly because of Louisville's history being named after the old French King Louis, but also because it could create a fun nickname, the Kings of Kentucky. I really wanted to call BYU the Stormin' Mormons, but that can be seen as pretty offensive to the LDS Church, so I decided against it. So I went a little into the history of Brigham Young, the namesake of BYU, and found out some interesting things. Some of you might know that Brigham Young was the leader of an insurrection against the United States known as the Utah War. It lasted just over a year from 1857 to 1858 and was caused mostly because LDS settlers had arrived in the Utah Territory to claim it as Deseret, which is basically the Mormon Israel. The U.S. was going to claim the Utah Territory during Manifest Destiny, and the settlers, thinking the U.S. was going to annihilate them and forcibly take it, fought them for it. It's a very dark and complicated part of American history, but it's a part of BYU's history, and Brigade starts off like Brigham does, so they're the Brigham Young Brigade. Houston's original name of the Cougars was literally a transplant from Washington State, so it doesn't get that much more unoriginal than that. Which is a shame, because Houston and the general Texas area has a wealth of history to choose a new nickname from. I could just change the name from Cougars to Pumas, but that feels a little cheap. There were a lot of options, too. I could go with the Generals in reference to the city's namesake, Sam Houston. Instead, I chose to connect with their history in the space industry and call them the Voyagers, which just seems like a clean name. The only name Wazoo was officially known as before they became the Cougs was the Indians, and I'm not going back to that for obvious reasons. But I'm intrigued about this story. Their first official mascot was a terrier named Squirt. Squirt was a good boy, and since all other terrier teams don't play FBS college football, Washington State becomes the Terriers. As much as it hurts to rip Frank Eaton away from Oklahoma State, and really, Cowboys and Oklahoma just go together too well to justify taking them away, they do share the nickname with Wyoming, so they've both got to go. Oklahoma as a state has a long and rich history with natural oil, first being discovered near Salina, Oklahoma in the late 1850s. Salina is 2 hours and a Tulsa away from Stillwater, but Oklahoma has boomed into one of the United States' top exporters of natural gas and crude oil. Combine that with the fortune earned by the family of famed Oklahoma State alum and booster T. Boone Pickens in the oil industry, and the Oklahoma State Oilers makes too much fracking sense. Taking the Cowboy out of Wyoming would be like ripping its identity away from it. The Cowboy quite literally is the image of Wyoming. So instead of changing the nickname to something like the Thunderbirds, I decided I'd just change the terminology. I settled on the Broncbusters over the Buckaroos, taking a name from Garden City Community College here in Kansas. They get to keep their logos and imagery, as well as the rugged frontier spirit Wyoming is known for. Boston College isn't unique in that they're a former revolutionary city that selected the eagle as a mascot. Why not kick it all the way up to 11 and call themselves the Revolutionaries? This one's pretty simple. After they were the Hurons, Eastern Michigan almost went by a handful of names before settling on the Eagles, but one they should have considered was the Emus. Their abbreviation is EMU. Come on, guys, it's obvious. One of Georgia State's former nicknames before they chose the Eagles was actually the Blue Tide. I know Statesboro isn't all that close to the Atlantic Ocean, but it is pretty close, and the Blue Tide is such a good nickname, especially since it ties into other Southern schools' nicknames like Alabama and Tulane. How do you even go about renaming the Air Force? The Falcons' nickname was perfect for the manifestation of that particular branch of the armed forces, and calling them something like the Pilots didn't seem too creative. But there's one cool nickname that I think works for them: the Thunderbirds. Not only is the Thunderbird a type of plane that's made famous by the Air Force, the mythical Thunderbird was an entity revered by many Native American tribes and cultures all over the United States. And since the Air Force flies all over the country as well, the nickname made sense to me. Bowling Green's history isn't really all that deep in terms of nicknames, and the school itself isn't all that steeped in culture either, other than their 1959 Small College Division national title. That makes it kind of difficult to find a new nickname for them. History of the town of Bowling Green gives us dead bank robbers and prisoners of war, so I decided to go another direction. Bullfrogs are everywhere in the United States. If you're east of the Rockies, chances are you have a bullfrog less than a mile from you at all times. They're steeped in American culture, and yet no school I can think of calls themselves the Bullfrogs, which is weird to me, because other animals known for being jerks in general, like the Blue Jays and Cardinals, are common mascots, but the humble greenback who will eat things just because they don't like them isn't. Bull sounds like the start of Bowling Green and frogs are green, so there's the connection. If you remember from my older video, Jacksonville State was once called the Eagle Owls. I decided against a storm nickname due to the 2018 tornado, so I returned to the animals of Appalachian, Alabama to find a new mascot, and I think I found one: the timber rattlesnake. Timber rattlers are some of the most feared animals in northern Alabama, given their potent venom and quick strike capabilities. In Alabama, the timber rattler also has a unique nickname: the cane breaker. so I decided to rename Jacksonville State to the Canebreakers. Since there are 2 Gamecocks in the FBS, they both had to go, which created a bit of a problem for South Carolina. Their nickname was a reference to a Revolutionary War hero, Thomas Sumter, who was also known as the Gamecock for his fighting spirit. Since that's gone, I had to go in a different direction, but one probably fitting for USC: the Palmettos. If Stanford can have a tree and Ohio State can be a poisonous nut, then South Carolina can be the tree that epitomizes their state. Northern Illinois was another hard one. Their only name history is the Cardinals and the Evansmen, after their old head coach. But the city of DeKalb is actually named after another Revolutionary War hero, a Frenchman who assisted the Continental Army in the battle against the British. I'm staying with that French military theme and going with the Brigadiers. UMass is already the Minutemen, and I already changed Boston College's nickname to be more patriotic. So what the heck do you do with UConn? I was really tempted to bring back the Whalers nickname, even if it wouldn't make all that much sense, but I thought it'd be funny. Instead, I chose to make an homage to the Charter Oak in Connecticut, with the nickname of the Chartermen or Charterwomen. A long, long time ago, Washington once went by the Sun Dodgers. They got rid of it because they felt like it was being too mean to Seattle, but come on, it's such an original name, the logo was hilarious, bring back the Sun Dodgers, that's all. Let's be honest here, guys, do we really want to change the names of App State and West Virginia? Both of these universities are nestled within the very culture of Appalachia, and to change their names would feel both like a sin, and it would hurt them. And to what? Back to the West Virginia Snakes? Into something that feels demeaning like the coal miners or Canaries? If you guys can think of something, then more power to you, but I'm honestly going to leave these 2 universities alone. The Mountaineer means so much more to these schools than just a nickname. This one's another kind of cheaty one. Florida Atlantic is called the Owls because of a colony of burrowing owls that were on campus before the university was built. Instead of choosing a new nickname, I'm going to keep this fun bit of culture and change FAU's nickname from the Owls to the Burrowing Owls. Kennesaw State can't be as lucky as FAU. The Great Horned Owl is Kennesaw's official mascot, and they share it with plenty of other teams. While doing research on Kennesaw, I discovered the story of the locomotive The General, which was a Southern resource train that was commandeered by Northern troops during what was later known as the Civil War's Great Locomotive Chase. The General now sits in Kennesaw, and the story of its capture presents the perfect nickname of the Bandits for Kennesaw State. I mean, this one's sort of obvious. It's Rice. They're the Scholars. Philadelphia is the location of one of America's most famous historical landmarks, the Liberty Bell. I chose to pay homage to this titan of Philly culture in Temple's new nickname of the Liberty. In perhaps the most egregious mascot assassination of all time, Florida International started their athletics journey going by the Sunblazers until they changed it for seemingly no reason into the Golden Panthers in 1987. There's been some decent attempts to bring back the Sunblazers nickname, including as a design on some helmets, so I think they'd better just bite the bullet and bring the whole nickname back instead. Finding a new nickname for Georgia State was incredibly difficult. They'd been known as the Panthers since the very beginning of their programs in 1963, but before that were known as the Ramblers. Instead of going back there, I wanted to cheat because it's just a crime that no schools in the state really adopt the Peach State identity that Georgia has. GSU can stay the Panthers, but only if they officially become the Peach Panthers and change their secondary color to peach. Seem fair? Finding a new mascot for Pitt was more difficult than I thought it would be. Pitt's been known as the Panthers since at least 1909. It was named not just after the local panther populations in western Pennsylvania, but also its character being something Pitt wanted to embody. I was, however, drawn to Pitt's tradition of the victory lights that are shown on Pitt's Cathedral of Learning after every football team victory. It's a little lame, and I hope that some Pitt fans can provide some better nicknames for them in the comments, but I decided to go with the Luminaries. As easy as it would be to lean into the whole Land Sharks thing as Ole Miss's new mascot instead of the Rebels, that feels like too low-hanging of fruit. I considered calling them the Scholars based on the connections between the city of Oxford, Mississippi and Oxford University in England, but at the end of the day, it all comes back to the Magnolias. The trees are everywhere in the American South, but perhaps are most famous in Mississippi. I really wanted to avoid any reference to gambling with UNLV's mascot. Instead, I chose to patrol the Mojave Desert as a whole to find a new mascot for them. I came back not just hoping for nuclear winter, but with the new mascot of the Diamondbacks. Yes, it might just be a ripoff of the Arizona Diamondbacks, and if you really care that much, just go with the Sidewinders as a nickname. But the diamond pattern of the snake's back is also derivative of the diamonds found on playing cards. Aw, dang it, I referenced gambling anyway. It really surprises me that no upper Midwestern schools to this point officially claim the moose as their mascot. It's widely considered to be not just one of the most quietly graceful creatures of the North, but also one of the most dangerous, becoming an almost magical creature that you have to keep your distance from. Michigan starts with M, so the moose made the most sense. Earthquakes loom large over the entire state of California as an impending threat, but Californians have learned to mitigate their effect as well as respect their power. San Jose sits within the Bay Area, which is widely known for its seismic activity. Creating a logo for the Quakes could be difficult, but there's no denying how quintessentially San Jose it would be, especially at the FBS level. Auburn gets to cheat a little. While their mascot of the Tigers is common, they're also home to one of the most unique chants in college sports, that of War Eagle. While War Eagle came about after the nickname of Tigers did, it's still an easy switch. Auburn becomes the War Eagles. If that feels a little too cheaty for you, though, you could always just call them the Plainsmen. Clemson, Clemson, or Clemson, however you call them, Clemson's nickname of the Tigers was 100% imported. Whether you ascribe that it came from Auburn or Princeton doesn't matter. But finding a new nickname for them is pretty tricky. I considered Palmettos to call back to the nickname of South Carolina as the Palmetto State, but figured that was better suited for South Carolina. So instead, I had to look into Clemson's history. One of Clemson's past mascots was just a guy in a purple suit called the Southern Gentleman, and this is just so funny to me that I had to make it their official mascot. Behold, the Clemson Gentleman. LSU's another one that's actually pretty easy, and this time we don't have to change any of the logos. One of LSU's nicknames is the Bayou Bengals, and they've been called that even more so since Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase got drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals. So the Bayou Bengals it is for LSU. You might remember from my prior video that Memphis started their athletics journey as being known as the Blue and Gray, or the Blue and Gray Warriors. I wanted to keep their school colors at the forefront of their new nickname. Luckily, the city of Memphis has a long history with blues music, from B.B. King to Elvis. Their new nickname is right there, the Memphis Blues. Missouri's nickname of the Tigers is steeped in Civil War history as the name of a group of anti-Confederate militiamen who protected the city of Columbia from outside forces. As much as I want to keep the nickname, I have to change it. Luckily for Missouri, the state's also home to two of America's greatest tributaries, the Mississippi River and the Missouri River. The Missouri River actually runs just a few miles to the southwest of Columbia. I chose to honor these two rivers and their histories by renaming the Tigers to the Rivermen. Stepping away from the Trojans is a near Shakespearean tragedy for a university literally located in Troy, so instead of trying to find some local wildlife or history to pull from, I went the Athens route and tried to find a piece of Greek history that could fit with Troy. I decided to avoid calling them the Horses because that's lame and went with the Titans. Still kind of a cop-out, but at least a reference to Greek myth. USC first became known as the Trojans in 1912, and before then they were known as the Methodists and the Wesleyans in reference to their evangelical roots. Today, USC has distanced itself from that church history, so finding something a little more Hollywood would make the most sense. I thought about a whole host of SoCal things, the Stars, the Legends, the Quakes again, before I settled on the Vanguards. From humble beginnings, USC has grown alongside Hollywood and Los Angeles as a whole into becoming one of the most important schools and places in the United States, not just in terms of culture, but economy and politics as well. A nickname like the Vanguards epitomizes this forward-thinking nature and also shows how the school has evolved alongside its surroundings over time. I originally wanted to call Arizona something like the Copperheads as a reference to the state's history with copper mining. But, as I'm sure those of you in the South know, copperhead snakes live nowhere near the state of Arizona, so I had to improvise. Arizona, more than any other state, is associated with the saguaro cactus, the towering, cartoonish desert flora you think of when you think of the desert. Seeing as it's at the heart and soul of the Arizona landscape, I decided to keep the greatest logo in Arizona history and just go by the saguaros. I know, it's my alma mater, so it should be easy to rename Kansas State, right? Wrong! They can't be the Tornadoes because Iowa State is already the Cyclones, and they can't be the Bison because Colorado is already the Buffaloes. Want to reference wheat? Not only is Wichita State already the Shockers, which is short for Wheat Shockers, but Tulsa is known as the Golden Hurricane, which kind of seems like wheat even though it isn't. If you want to reference cattle, Oklahoma State's already the Cowboys. And any reference to abolition is out the window because of KU's nickname of the Jayhawks. So I had to get meta for my nickname for K-State, and it's multi-layered. Manhattan, and by extension K-State, was founded by abolitionists, but it was also founded early in the state of Kansas's history, back when it was still a frontier, full of pioneers. K-State would later become home to a whole bunch of firsts. Harold Robinson became the first black football player in Big 7 history when he suited up for K-State in 1949. Earl Woods became the conference's first black baseball player in 1951, and Gene Wilson joined KU's Levon Squires as the first black basketball players in conference history in 1951. Dave Baker in 1978 was the Big 8's first black baseball coach. There's a lot of trailblazing in K-State's history, and instead of calling them the Trailblazers, I decided on a different nickname, the Pioneers. That pioneering spirit is common everywhere in Manhattan, and I figure it makes a perfect nickname for K-State. When looking for something to rename Kentucky to, I originally wanted to call them something reminiscent of their colors, so something like the bluegrass, which is both a type of wild grass native to Kentucky and a style of music. But that felt a little stilted, and I couldn't really call them the Colonels because, well, Eastern Kentucky is already the Colonels. Horses and horse racing is already off the table because of Murray State and Kentucky State already having mascots that call back to that. So I dove a little deeper and found out that Lexington, Kentucky holds the annual Festival of the Bluegrass, which features the fiddle prominently. It all clicked after that. The Kentucky Fiddlers. Once upon a time, Northwestern not only considered moving their athletics programs away from the Big Ten and into the Ivy League, but they also considered changing their name from the Wildcats into the Purple Haze. So for the sake of this video, I'm reviving that almost nickname for usage in this new alternate reality.